We begin with judicial matters. 1 year after the Supreme Court's landmark ruling granting full financial autonomy to Nigeria's 774 local governments, the judgment is yet to be enforced. Despite the court's directive stopping state governments from controlling council funds, allocations are still not being paid directly. The July 2024 ruling followed a suit by the federal government seeking to end decades of state interference. A 10-member committee was set up to enforce the decision, but political and bureaucratic delays have allegedly stalled progress. Also, the central bank's demand for 2 years of audited reports has further delayed implementation. Civil society groups, lawyers, ALGON and NULGE are now urging the Tinubu administration to act swiftly and enforce the ruling without further delay. And now joining me to discuss the implications of the delay and the disobedience of the Supreme Court ruling on local government autonomy in Nigeria is a lawyer, Todimu Ige. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure. All right, so Todimu Ige, can you, or let me paraphrase and say, can state governments be held in contempt of court for continuing to control local government funds despite the Supreme Court's directive?
Yes, when the court has given a directive, when the court has given an order, all parties who are subject of that court action are bound by the instructions and the order of the court. So to answer your question, simply, Sita, if the state governments, either any state government is liable or refusing to enforce the order of court, then they can be held in contempt.
So is the federal government legally obligated to enforce the ruling? And what legal remedies exist if it fails to do so?
Now, the federal government was the one that went to court, and ordinarily, there has been a lot of back and forth. 1 year is more than long enough to enforce a judgment of the court. It goes a long way to talk about the kind of country we run when we don't obey the rule of law, because any society that does not obey the rule of law is an invitation to anarchy. 1 year is more than enough, and I believe that somebody somewhere is not doing their job, because if you are saying that 1 year there's one bureaucracy or the other to more than a year, that's unfair, and I think that the federal government ordinarily should enforce this judgment. As a matter of fact, the Attorney General of the Federation once said that anyone that does not comply with the order of court would be tried for treason. 1 year after, nobody has been tried. Nobody has lost their job. No enforcement of this judgment. And I believe that this is very wrong. And we must begin to walk the talk of the rule of law and enforce valid orders of court.
So what does this delay say about the strength and the enforceability of Supreme Court judgments in Nigeria's democratic system?
Well, as it stands in situations like this, ordinarily, when the court has given a judgment, the onus lies on the party who has gone to court to ensure that there is compliance. If there is no compliance to the order of court, then the winner at the court can actually apply to the court to enforce the judgment. If the judgment is not complied with, then you can actually apply to try the other party for contempt of court, because if you don't obey an order of court, it's contempt. And of course, there are adequate provisions under our law to ensure that the order of court is complied with. If it is not complied with, such parties and individuals can be tried for contempt on court, and they can be thrown in jail for that.
So does the Central Bank of Nigeria have the legal authority to impose additional conditions like audited accounts before complying with the judgment?
Well, as it stands, the CBN is also a statutory body, and ordinarily to do its job, yes, there's a court judgment that says that this must be done. However, to do the needful to ensure compliance, he also has his practice direction. They can actually say, yes, we desire to have an audited account so that we can know how these monies are spent. But it doesn't mean that It doesn't give them the power to overturn or override a valid order of court. If it needs clarification, if the other parties that desire the enforcement can actually go to court to say, oh, we need an interpretation. Does the CBN have the right or power to withhold these funds because they desire an audited account? So, we can't just sit down and begin to rely on sentiments. The courts is the appropriate place to ask. Nobody has a right to say, oh, I won't do this, I'll do that. You must go to court if you need an interpretation, or else compliance is sacrosanct. That is how we can grow our society. That is how the rule of law can thrive.
So what options are available to local government or their associations like ALGON or NULGE to compel compliance with the court ruling?
Number one, I would suggest strongly that the local governments could actually reach out to the court or file an action for contempt to say that the order of court has not been complied with and there should be sanctions.
All right, Todimu Ige, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your thoughts on this. We appreciate your time.